This is KTN News.
Welcome back once more. Now, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is set to start planning. We understand, our sources indicate that the IEBC has held a crisis meeting on in preparation to hold another presidential election in less than 60 days. They are said to be doing some rejigging of the systems to and of course retendering some of the things, the ballot materials and all that, to align themselves with that ruling by the Supreme Court. Let's listen into the reaction of the IEBC chairman, Wafula Chebukati, after that petition ruling on Friday.
The Commission invites the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution to urgently and expeditiously investigate and prosecute any of our staff that may have been involved in violation of the Election Offences Act. The Commission will have a sitting either today evening or tomorrow. The plenary will make a decision, and those changes will be outlined, and we shall invite you here to give you that whatever we have said, most probably tomorrow afternoon. Thank you.
Chebukati, chairman of the IEBC, of already calling for investigations on his commission. Meanwhile, the NASA side have been calling on IEBC to be held culpable of bungling the election. Let's listen in.
It is now clear that the entire edifice of IEBC is rotten. Clear evidence shows that the commission was taken over by criminals who ran the electoral election, the general election, using the technology system, and resulted in a computer-generated leadership for the people. This is not confined to the presidential elections. It affects also gubernatorial, senatorial, women rep, members of parliament, and MCAs. So the so-called Jubilee majority is artificial. It is now also clear that the CEO, Ezra Chiloba, Directors Immaculate Kasait, Commissioner in charge of ICT, Professor Abdi Yakub Guliye, Head of Legal Affairs, Praxidis Tororei, Mrs. Betty Nyabuto of Operations, and John Mohati of IT were co-conspirators with these criminals. They must face criminal prosecution.
Yes.
As a take of the National Super Alliance leader Raila Odinga, let's listen to what Jubilee have had to say about the electoral body.
Tumesema tunataka kupiga kura baada ya wiki mbili tatu, alafu tutapigania. Alafu nataka Tinga asikie. Nataka Maraga anisikie vizuri. Nataka huyo Orengo anisikie vizuri. Tunataka kupigania kurudisha demokrasia ya Kenya. Hatuwezi kubali ya kwamba Kenya 45 million will go to a vote and 4 people without any provisions of the law wanaweza keti chini na kubadilisha Kenya. Na nataka kuambia Tinga namna hii, ile vitisho ametutisha akome kutoka leo. Kwani ako na nini yenye sisi hatuna? Ako na upande gani yenye hatuna? Lazima ajue ya kwamba hatuwezi kutishwa tena. Na Mheshimiwa Rais, usikie vizuri, uchaguzi utafanywa, haitafika wiki 4, na hiyo uchaguzi itafanywa na IEBC. Kama Tinga anataka kura ya UN aende New York. Kama anataka kura ya wazungu aende kwa wazungu. Kura ya Kenya itapigwa na IEBC.
Wanatuambia ya kwamba ati kura ya mwananchi haina maana. Na mimi nataka niwaulize, tunataka IEBC itutangazie siku ya uchaguzi ni tarehe gani? ndio ule mzee wa kitendawili na mti yake ya kotini Maraka tuwaonyeshe kivumbi. Ama Ramadhani Nakuru. Mko tayari? Na senators wa NASA walichaguliwa na IEBC. Uchaguzi wa MCS ulisimamiwa na IEBC. Uchaguzi wa women rep ulisimamiwa na IEBC. Watafute watu wajinga ya kuwadanganya. Uchaguzi wa rais utasimamiwa na IEBC.
That is Jubilee's team saying they are comfortable with the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission conducting the fresh presidential election. The National Super Alliance saying they need people in jail in the IEBC for allegedly what they call bungling the election. Ofole Chebukati already inviting the DPP, the DPP's office to investigate the commission. Is this said to be, Kenyans don't have a lot of time. It's less than 60 days to have another election. Why is this the correct, is it supposed to be the next political battle, whether IEBC should conduct the election or not? Or should the two sides of the political divide be focused on making sure we have another election?
Well, three things. Number one, in my view, it's wrong for Mr. Raila Odinga to say that the entire IEBC is rotten. It's not possible that the entire IEBC is rotten. There's a very high probability that a number of commissioners and a number of senior managers are cartel members. And he's actually given out a list of the people that who must be fired. Now, one would expect Mr. Raila Odinga to write a letter to the Director of Public Prosecutions and give evidence as to why those people need to be fired, because it seems like he's got a lot of information. And if he doesn't have time in his schedule, he can delegate to Honorable Jared Okello here to go and present that information so that those people face charges, criminal charges, so that it becomes a lesson. Because you recall, from the time we started having election, nobody has ever been prosecuted for an electoral offense or related. So it's important for these people to be charged. And it must be clear to everybody that it's going to be IEBC to run this election. We are not going to get another body from the UN or from Africa Union or from the European Union. Instead, what we need to do, because the members of the National Assembly and Senate are already in session, is to establish a bipartisan committee and find out what are the challenges that IEBC has faced, guided by the Supreme Court ruling, so that they can rectify those situations and we go for another election. But trying to say that you can invite the United Nations or any other international agency to come and run an election in Kenya, in my view, that's a shooting in the dark. It is not going to work. All we need to do is identify what were the weaknesses and address them and have another fresh election.
All right. Jared, can the IEBC conduct a credible election as it is constituted?
Well, firstly, I've listened to that rally from Nakuru by the President Deputy and Murkomen. And they are not unique things. We've been exposed to such kind of brouhaha before, those empty threats and rhetorics. Before the reconstitution of the current IEBC, we had a lot of support to IEBC from the same group of people. But what happened? They went home. And if we hear such kinds of threats, they only remind us what they said before, but we still send the culprits home. Now, it is also important to note, Ben, that about 7 days to the elections, IEBC lost a very critical person in the hands of heinous killers. To this very day, we haven't had IEBC either writing to the DPP or DCI to help them with the investigating of that issue, so that we can with certainty know who killed Msando. IEBC is all of a sudden very quiet. And let me give you a practical example. But God forbid that if you lose a kid, and I come all the way from Ahero in Kisumu to come and question who killed your baby, but for you, you are very complicit. You are just quiet. So what does that tell me? That there is something you know about that death that you don't want investigated. Why is IEBC several days after the death of Msando, they haven't uttered a word concerning that particular thing? Even when United States through FBI and UK through Scotland Yard offered to provide tacit support in order to unearth these heinous killers, IEBC have never uttered a word. Jubilee government have never uttered a word.
Right.
What is it? Yet this was their baby. This is somebody who played a pivotal role in this electoral process. So that is why we are saying If IEBC is complicit with crime, let them go home. We will get new people to come into the
So
stage.
here's the question,
But the
Jared.
question,
Here's the
I
question.
can know what your question is.
No, you don't.
We only
My
have
question is,
presidential
do you
election.
have time to start disbanding the Electoral Commission?
Correct. Now I had foreseen your question. This is an election that is only conducted at the presidential level. What really messes up elections in Kenya is when everybody from MCA all the way to the president have to be elected. But here we are only dealing with one electoral process. We don't even have to go to Al Ghurair, because this is just about 40,000 ballot papers, primarily for not 40,000 but 15 million. Very exact, just for the presidential, of course, with the provision of 1%, as was catered for in the Elections Act Amendment 2016. So these are very few papers that can even be printed by standard group here. We don't necessarily have to go to Al Ghurair, and you provide the necessary security features. So on that, this is going to be a very easy process. This is an election that we can conduct with the existing secretariat devoid of all the commissioners. This is an electoral process we can conduct with the secretariat devoid of Chiloba. Let them go home, let us conduct ourselves and do the election.
But Chiloba is the secretariat.
Well, that is why I had to mention him particularly, because the rest, line managers can as well run this electoral process perfectly well. They can, and they have the capacity. So they should not tell us that when these commissioners are out, we can't do one particular electoral process. This is so easy. We can do with the line managers.
But Ben, a point of departure, it must be the IEBC to run this election, maybe with technical support from elsewhere. Because if you kick out the commissioners, and it's not even possible, who is going to declare the results? You can't have the guy in charge of procurement declaring the results. It has to be IEBC, but under very close supervision, because IEBC is an independent body. You would understand where Jared Okilo is coming from and his NASA leadership, that they will have to wipe emotions and their basis. But when you look at the law, even if today you want to disband IEBC, how long will the process take of identifying the new commissioners? When will they come to office? And before they come to office, who will sign the law for them to become commissioners? So maybe what NASA should be doing is to do a quick audit, or rather in a bipartisan manner. NASA, Jubilee, do a bipartisan audit of what happened at IEBC, what needs to be sorted out, guided by the Supreme Court ruling, to find out the challenges, address them, and we go for an election. And the way Jared has indicated, this election is going to be a walk in the park, because essentially it's just one election, and we shouldn't even take 3 hours to get an announcement.
But it is the one election that was problematic.
To be fair on IEBC, there are comments that Mheshimiwa has made that I think need some clarification, that the IEBC seems to be complicit in crime. First, I think it's only fair to admit that they called for a speedy investigation into the murder of Msando. That one is very clear. Secondly, we've seen the IEBC chair again invite the DPP to look at those who were culpable in the just ended election, so that he can take action as the DPP. So I think it is not fair to say that they are complicit in crime using those examples, because they've already come out to show that they are ready to actually make sure that we get to the bottom of this. The issue of FBI, again, it is really not, there is the relevant government agency when it comes to such an offer about FBI coming to help, and I do not think that agency is the IEBC. So again, that is very unfair to want to put that on to accuse IEBC of the same.
From where you sit, why is this debate alive? Why does NASA want IEBC to be disbanded, and why is Jubilee so keen on defending
them?
IEBC? It's a double-edged question.
The issue is this: what was the ruling of the court, so that we are very clear on the facts that it is the first respondent to do what? To conduct an election. So that one, like, I want to go to agree with Dismas. There is no dispute on who should conduct this election. It is the IEBC. Then, Mheshimiwa had quoted the Bill of Rights that is in our constitution. We also have issues of Commission on Administration of Justice, that administrative acts should be fair. So why are we calling for collective punishment of IEBC? So what my position would be is that we now have an Election Offences Act that is very clear, unlike in the past, of issues to do with individual culpability. So what we need to do is, we are waiting for the ruling. Let's get to know who are the people who are criminally culpable, so that the DPP comes in. Let's get to see those people who probably did some wrongs, but the threshold does not make whatever wrong they did criminal, so that the commission can take administrative acts. You know, there is administrative actions, like sacking or transferring. That one does not need the DPP. And I think from what I read from the chairman's statement, they are implying that they are going to take such actions depending on whatever information they have. So the thing is this: we are a country governed by the rule of law. There are things that went wrong, and the Supreme Court have said that. So what we need to do is to be very keen and very objective in establishing what actually went wrong, who were involved, and what action should be taken, guided by the law. That will still leave us with an IEBC. So that is the IEBC that probably should now conduct the next election, because there is also the issue of Kenyans having faith in the referee. And now that the referee is the guilty one in this case, they were very clear that my party leader is not guilty of anything in this thing. So this thing is about IEBC. Let's look at whatever mechanisms they themselves, and you know, we need to remember that it is independent electoral and boundaries commission. So it is really not about what NASA is saying, neither is it about what Jubilee is saying. It is about them as an institution doing self-evaluation in the light of what is happening and giving Kenyans their suggested way forward so that they can win the confidence of those who are in doubt because of the ruling of the Supreme Court.
Hesbon, what should be the way forward?
I think what Mutinda is saying is true, that IEBC should self-evaluate itself, but we gave them a chance to do that before the election. They did not. So you look at where NASA is sitting and where Jubilee is sitting, they're both anchored on the judgment by the court, because the court made it clear that the first respondent will hold the election, and that is IEBC. The court also made it clear that there were irregularities, meaning that there are individuals in IEBC who must be held criminally culpable, not IEBC. So it is incumbent upon the system itself, and the system has nothing to do with the political class, to identify these individuals with the help of IEBC and hold these individuals criminally culpable. And therefore, when you look at the statements that are made by the Honorable Deputy President and, Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, they're actually saying the truth that IEBC will hold this election. But the reason why they're arousing emotions and making it look like it is IEBC, no, they should not excite people. This is what is in the law. It is still IEBC, and getting rid of IEBC is technically impossible. It will throw us to a very dark space that we don't want. But then, you also need to come back to NASA, and probably they need to realize that, rather than throw stones in the darkness and hope that whoever the stone hits will cry, and that is the person, they need to be very clear, on who is criminally culpable with the help of the other agencies, because it is not a political thing, so that these individuals are dealt with. It is unfortunate that the comprehensive ruling will be in the public domain in the next 21 days. So that, again, gives you a very difficult position to find yourself. But coming back to Jubilee, I think Jubilee needs to go back and start sending the same signal. Because if you look at what the political class in the Jubilee wing of the coalition is saying, right, and then look at what their lawyers are saying, they're actually contradicting themselves big time. And it is good if they sat down and listened to themselves. One of their key lawyers, a very respectable lawyer, is talking about this election was won by President Uhuru Kenyatta, and the court even alluded to the fact that there was no issue with numbers, it is the processes. Meaning, if IEBC has denied them the opportunity to have this winning upheld because of these irregularities and illegalities, then it is Jubilee that should be the first pointing fingers at the holes in IEBC that made them not have this ruling. It is not even NASA. Right. So it is in the interest of these sides, if they listen to each other, to sit down and say what we need and what Kenyans need is a free, fair, and credible election. So from here, where do we go?
All right. Let's take a quick commercial break, very quick one, and when we come back, we wind up this conversation on the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Remember, one of the political parties, the Third Way Alliance, has called for the United Nations to come in and conduct this election. We'll talk about that and more.